For those of you listening right now live, what you can't see, and we had some things come up over the lunch break there. The people said, "Man, they wish they could see me." Well, in the future, we're working on some technology to make that happen. But the fact that we got a split screen with a little Elmo unit, so you can hi everybody, see that? So anyway, because you can't see me, then those of you listening won't be affected by me taking off my tie. But for those of you at home, if you don't mind, I'm going to get a little bit more comfortable here because this afternoon we got a lot to cover. All right, so here we go. Is that okay, Philip? Let me unbutton this button too. Okay, so let's review, guys. Where have we been here today? We have covered a lot of ground. And something that I want to cover here at the top, I actually had an email come over from one of you down in Dallas, Texas. And I want to first of all say thank you for sending the email because I'm glad you brought this up. It's a point I want to clarify. And basically what the email was is, Lee, I got involved in your program because I wanted to borrow money at 65% of the after repaired value. And you're telling me that I can only borrow 65% of the contracted value. He said, so am I being punished for being an expert negotiator? And the answer is absolutely not. He went on to say, I've got lenders in my own market where I'm borrowing funds at 65 cents on the after repaired value, and they're allowing me to escrow funds and give me money for fix-up and repair and on and on and on. And to which I say, fabulous. That's great. And the very fact that you know what you're doing in that area and that you've already identified private money lenders in your market, that's phenomenal. I've never represented myself to be the only lender in the country. Okay? There are thousands of them. I'm merely one. And if you've got programs in your own market that are giving you better yields or better returns or better investments, you don't have to bring your deals to me. I am one source for funding. Okay? I just happen to be connected to a lot of other sources for funding. And I'll tell you guys, the email I got, it reminded me, he brings up a very good point. If you're dealing with local investors who can go over and physically walk the property, go through it, maybe drive over to your house, go have lunch with you, get a feel for who you are and what you're about, you very well might find lenders that are willing to go higher. Okay? They'll go higher, they'll require less money down, they'll give you money for fix-ups, and that's just about relationships. But guys, that's the very thing I was talking about. We can do those types of loans too, but not on the first date, all right? We're not going to jump in bed together on the first date. We need to get married first, and that means we need to do a couple of deals before we're taking on that much risk, not only for our portfolio, but also for our investors' portfolio. So again, it's nothing personal. We just want to go on a couple of dates before we start funding 100% of your acquisition price and giving you money for fix-up and repair. But again, if you've got people in your markets who will do those things for you now, then please continue to use them for that side of your business. You may find the benefit of what I do more in line with your business on a larger scale, because we're very good at bringing in cooperatives together, getting multiple lenders involved in larger projects. So again, if you've got people that'll do smaller stuff at better terms, lower rates and fees, then certainly go with them, please. All right? Now, on that note, I also want to point this out. Okay? My purpose here today is to instruct you and educate you on the types of loans that are going to get you paid the fastest. All right? So I've been talking about 65% of your contract price, and then you'll need to contribute the difference. All right? That's a pretty standard across the board statement. It doesn't mean that there's not room for adjustments either way, depending on what we're getting back in the form of credit reports, what we're getting back in the form of your background, your experience in the business. There's a lot of things that adjust what we can or cannot do. So I'm trying to give you some guidelines as to deals that will get you paid the fastest, but I would certainly never make representations that we can't or we won't. If everything works and it looks good, we'll do everything we can to provide funding, because again, this is where you all need to check yourselves at the door and say, okay, does Lee really just not want to fund my deal? The answer is, again, guys, if I'm not funding your deals, I'm not making money either. So it is in my best interest to work with you to do whatever is necessary to get funding. All I'm asking from you is that you do the necessary due diligence items so that you know you're delivering a package that can get funding very, very quickly. All right? So on that note, what we're going to cover here in the afternoon session is the types of properties. I'm going to go through a deal here so you know exactly what needs to happen so that we can get funding out and get the deal done as fast as possible, okay? So session 3 is how you get paid. Yip-ee. Now, one last thing I'm going to do here before we go. I didn't take some time at the end of the last session to answer any questions that may have come up before the break. So I'm going to touch on those here real quick. Let's see. Let's see here. Okay, this one's coming over from Gwendolyn, it looks like. Lee, I was also led to believe that the 65% was on ARV, not the purchase, which is fairly easy to come by. I don't believe you explained that, and then it disappeared. I don't know where it went. I don't believe you explained that way when we signed up. Guys, I did, okay? When you signed up, it was 65% of the purchase price. Now, I showed you 4 examples in the presentation. 3 of the examples, the investors brought cash to the table. The fourth example, where all of the funding was brought to the table and fix-it monies were brought to the table, the investor that funded that deal was providing funds to an investor that they had a relationship with, okay? And that's why they were willing to go as high as they did and provide the fix-up monies that they did. But that was a niche lender in a niche market. And again, that goes back to what I just got done saying. I would never tell you that a loan can't be funded, because if you take the time and go through the pains of finding that one individual niche lender in that market that is willing to take on 100% risk, 100% liability, and fund that deal, great, you're doing well. And I would encourage you to continue to use them and do business with them, because if they're willing to do that for you, that's great, okay? And again, once we've gone on a few dates, we'll have a much easier time finding lenders that can do it for you too. We just need to be able to represent that you have a proven track record of success with us, okay? Not taking into consideration all the other deals you've done, because I'm sure many of you have done a lot of those. Okay? Let's see here. What do we got here? Okay, another question. Are you still planning on doing pages 43 and 44 on title after lunch? Yes, we're going to cover that now. Thank you, Jerry. You didn't go over title, getting there. Thanks, Bill. This was all explained, Lee. People don't listen closely. Good Lord, Bill. All right. And Shaw, Lee, don't sweat the glitches, brother. We are all eager and ready to hear. All right, appreciate the feedback, guys. Okay, so I think we've addressed all of that. Let's move on here. And to do that, we're going to talk about titles. So go back in your books to page 42 and 44, and let's cover some of the basics of the title search, okay, starting with page number 43. Okay, the purpose of a title search is this. We want to know if the seller has a sellable interest in the title of the property. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Secondly, do any liens exist on the property that need to be paid off at the closing? Mortgages, back taxes, mechanic liens, or any other assessments. Now, you all need to understand that there's between abstract of title and what is a full-blown PR. Okay, now we will get into some of this. I actually have a full-blown PR here. Unfortunately, because of the nature of the information, I can't represent it here for you, but I do have a condensed version where I've crossed out a bunch of stuff that we're going to get into. But anyway, the difference between title abstract and a full-blown PR, which stands for preliminary title report, is that a title abstract represents only the liens against the subject property and the title of the subject property. It does not take into consideration anything to do with the person themselves. Now, there are liens that exist against the person that can attach to the property. However, if the property gets foreclosed on, the lien is wiped out, but it doesn't wipe it off of the person. For example, if you have a federal tax lien against you, if I do a preliminary title report, I'm probably going to see the federal tax lien against you personally. However, if it goes to auction and forecloses and the federal tax lien is junior to the trustee that's foreclosing, the federal tax liens will be wiped off of the property, but it will not be wiped off of the person, okay? So it's important that you know the difference. Abstract of title is everything dealing with the property. A full-blown title search deals with the property and the person. And you need to look at both of them to make sure there are no past indiscretions that are going to come against you during your ownership of the real property, okay? So we need to do a title search to make sure that the person that is contracted to sell us the property does indeed own the property. And we also need to know if any other liens exist that need to be paid off at the closings, and that's where we're dealing with mechanics liens or other assessments, all right? It will also clarify easements or recorded legal rights to the property. A previous owner may have given a neighbor the right to share the driveway, or the city may have a right to strips of the property for putting in utilities. So what we're looking for here are easement liens. Easements are places where the city or the local municipality has essentially purchased the property through eminent domain, which any city can do. In fact, in Spokane right now, there's a huge north-south freeway that's going in, and literally just acres and acres of housing were acquired by the city through a thing called eminent domain. Eminent domain says that any municipality can come in and take possession of the real property as long as they pay you the fair and marketable price for the real estate that they're acquiring. So easements work in that fashion. Also, if you're developing a piece of ground, if you've ever done any development, the city might say, we will give you the ability to plot, X number of lots, but to give you that high of a density of zoning, we need to maintain a 15-foot or a 30-foot strip down the center of your property where you cannot construct anything so that we can bring overhead power lines through the center of your property, okay? So developing property is an interesting business because you're constantly negotiating with cities and suppliers. A friend of mine was doing a development over in Idaho, and the city said they'd give them a higher density zoning if he built them a new fire station and bought them a new fire truck. So, some would say that, well, we won't get into it. Anyway, he built them a fire station, he bought them a fire truck, and because of that, he got the higher density zoning that he needed to maximize the profitability of the development, okay? But these easements, they do affect the value of the dirt, because if you can't do anything with it, then it has no value. So those easements really can affect value. Also keep that in mind when you are comping property, because if you're looking at a property with an easement and you're looking to do a higher and best use, you cannot rezone the easement and use it as buildable space. So it really does affect value. And this is something else that we take into consideration when we are looking at development projects or large commercial build-outs. These are the types of things that we want to be aware of. All right. Title insurance protects the buyer from title problems that may arise after a sale. All right. Full coverage search for sale, resale, transaction, and construction loans. We do a property lien search. We search for easements as well as CC&Rs, which stands for covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Now, if you're in an older built community, you may not have CC&Rs. And what CC&Rs are, if I'm going to go out and develop a piece of ground, let's say I got a 20-acre parcel of dirt, and I'm going to put in quarter-acre lots, and I'm going to build, 50, 60 houses in this development. Well, I want to make sure that the people who buy these lots and the builders that come in and build on my development, that I'm not selling lots to one guy who's building 4,000 square foot homes, and then the guy next door builds a house of 800 square feet. One of them uses rock and stucco and makes a really nice exterior finish, where the other guy uses like particle board and T111 siding, because they're not like kind. So to maintain the integrity or the value of that development, I'm going to impose CC&Rs, covenants, conditions, and restrictions, which limit what you can build in that community or in that area. So I'm going to dictate the footprint of the foundation that you have to pour. I'm going to dictate the square footage that you have to finish off before you can sell the property. I'm going to dictate the percentage of rock exterior that you have to put on that development. I'm going to dictate whether you can use stucco or whether you can use siding, or whether you can use hardy board or whatever it is you're going to do, the CC&Rs dictate what a builder can do in that development. Now, it's important to note that CC&Rs also dictate what you can do if you're going to rehab the property, all right? So you need to be aware of what the CC&Rs say. So if you're going into a planned unit development or what some call a PUD, where CC&Rs are readily available, make sure that whatever your plans for rehab are, that they fall in line with what the covenants, conditions, and restrictions allow you to do. Because if you do something that's unallowable, they can literally come in and force you to take off the improvements, okay? Agreements, resolutions, and ordinances that will affect the real property in question, okay? These can be a number of different things, accessed by the neighbors, if you've given them a pathway through the property, if they've maintained it for 7 years and paid taxes, technically they own the pathway, and that would have to show on title. Now, depending on what state you're in, I was in Utah for quite some time, and when we would develop there, it was really interesting because Utah is a desert. Salt Lake City is a desert, so you had to get something called water rights. Well, a friend of mine just called me last week, and he's developing a big 238-acre parcel and putting in a bunch of townhouses and condos and developments. And he was calling to see if I wanted to get involved in the project. And I said, what's title look like? He said, well, we have some title issues. I said, well, what? He says, well, we don't have enough water shares to develop the parcel. And I thought, well, if you don't have water rights, if you can't get the people living there water access, then nobody's going to give you money. No bank is going to lend to the end user buyers. You got to have water. I was out in San Diego with some clients doing some consulting not too long ago, and there was this huge house. It was like 6,200 square feet in San Diego. Beautiful home, sat on like 2 acres, horse property. And the price that it was listed for on the MLS was $282,000. Check this. $282,000 for a 6,200 square foot house on 2 acres in San Diego. You want to know why it was so cheap? Well, when they built it, they dug a well. Okay, so this property was being fed by a natural well. Well, the well went dry. And where they built the property was literally 1,000 feet away from the closest city water supply. So if you bought the house for $282,000, you would probably spend close to $250,000 bringing in the water line so that you could have water at that house. Now, I'm told that that's a real problem as you go east from the coast in California. Some of those areas, the wells are drying up, and so you can go in and pick up cheap property, but you're going to have to bring that water main in. So these are all of the things that title can show us and that can teach us. And guys, get very familiar with title because it truly, truly is your friend, and it can reveal a whole bunch of issues that you could avoid if you just know what you're looking for. And if you're unfamiliar with title or how it works, or maybe your experience is limited to maybe 1 or 2 fixer-upper houses, that's okay. Like I said, I can't provide legal advice, but I'm more than willing to consult with you and tell you what my opinion of the project is. Okay? Just know that because I'm familiar with a lot of these things, what you might be really excited about being a good deal may actually end up being not so good of a deal. So just go back to rule number 1 of our session this morning, which was don't fall in love with the project. Until you have closed on the deal, don't plan on buying it. Okay? In fact, one thing, and I'll tell you this is a secret of mine, the one thing that has probably saved me more money than anything else I've ever done, money on education, seminars, everything I've done, the one thing that saves me more money annually than anything else is a simple question. Okay? Please write it down. Anytime I find a great deal, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm out there walking through this property, and I just know this is a great deal, the one question I always ask myself is this: why am I so lucky? Okay? Please write it down. I want you to use it. Ask yourself, why am I so lucky? If this is such an amazing opportunity, if this is such a great deal, why was I able to get it and no one else was? Ask yourself that question, and you'll be amazed at the money you'll save in lost revenue on stupid deals. Guys, I probably spent more money than many of you combined doing really stupid things. All right. Search for liens against the owner and other parties on title. paying particular and close attention to areas where they allow multiple families to occupy or dwell the same property. In California, especially around college towns, and this is true of college towns across most of the country, they allow multiple unrelated people to occupy the same property. Well, in some markets, many different people have signed on the loan. So you might have 3 and 4 and 5 signers on the loan, and if you don't have clear title on all 5 of them, that's not a deal you even want to get involved in. A couple years ago, we were working on a short sale, and this was down in Arizona. And the occupants of the property, there were 4 people on the loan. So when we pulled this thing to start negotiating the short sale file, we had authorization from who we believed to be the seller. But when we pulled title, we found out that there were actually 3 other owners on title, which meant with only 1 signature, we only had 25% access, and we needed 3 other signatures to push this through. So we went back to the seller that we had contact with, and we said, hey, where are these other 3? And the response was that they had been imported or exported back to the country of origin, and we would have to track them down. So we actually had the homeowner find them. We sent certified letters via FedEx down to where they were living, had them sign authorization and release so that we now could negotiate the short sale. Had we not pulled title, we would have done a lot of work for nothing because we wouldn't have been able to close. Because when you close a deal, all parties on title either need to be present to sign, be available to sign, or have given power of attorney to someone else to sign on their behalf. But there is a signature required. Okay? Search for liens against the buyer for sale transactions only. So if you're going to be selling a property, you want to make sure that there aren't any past indiscretions from the buyer that they're bringing to the table. Okay? It's much like a marriage. When you purchase a piece of property, you get all of the past indiscretions of whoever owned it previous to you unless you insure it with title, and that's really what title insurance is. Just like in a marriage, if you're getting married for the first or the second time, whatever baggage, whatever credit challenges that person had coming into the marriage, they could come and corrupt you if you don't take the proper actions to keep that from happening. Now, if you are single and listening to this and you're in the process of getting married, I have a friend, and this is only coming to mind, I have a friend in Utah who's getting ready to get married. And I asked him about his future fiancée and his future bride, and he said, well, you know, I told her that if she had bad credit, I wouldn't marry her. I said, well, that's kind of rude. He's like, well, you know, she got her credit cleaned up. I said, you know, you could have accomplished the same thing by just not filing taxes together. If you would have kept your books separate, her credit indiscretions wouldn't affect you as long as you remain separate financially and on paper. So if that's where you're at, I would encourage you to make sure you keep separate for legal reasons. All right, limited coverage search for refinances and simple title guarantee reports. Well, we can do property lien searches. We can search for liens against the owner and other properties. We can search for bankruptcy proceedings against the owners, non-insured reports, lot books reports, plats, certificates, 300-foot radius reports. This is going to give us insight into all of the easements that may exist on title. Now, if you guys are familiar, I showed you the deal in the presentation that probably brought you to be listening to this. I talk about the deal we did with Carol. What happened is when we went in and did our 300-foot radius report on that project, what we found out is that what Carol was representing as a residential building lot had actually been blanket zoned by the city as a commercial use. Well, why or how does a city do that? Well, there's actually a number of reasons. If a city is trying to regentrify itself, okay, oftentimes, and you've all seen this, I don't care where you live, you've seen this, where the city will go in and change the zoning in an older area of town, allowing commercial properties to be built, existing structures to be torn down, and little bistros and shops and wine parlors to be built up. The reason that cities do that is because by regentrifying the center of town, all of the surrounding properties, it kind of becomes the atom bomb effect. If you fix the middle, it'll carry out a long way. And all of the values of those properties will exponentially go up, which means a higher tax base through the assessment, which means the county or the city or that municipality is going to make more money. Okay? Now, you can make a lot of money if you know how to read these 300-foot radius parcel plats merely by determining where are they blanket zoning areas, where are they forcing regentrification through zoning, and then buying up the surrounding property. Now, the great news is, if you really know what you're doing, you don't even have to buy up the surrounding properties. You just need to tie it up under option contracts from the owners, because the owners don't know that it's coming. One of the best deals that I did on a short-term flip is that I was down here looking at the plat maps in the city, and there was a development where this guy had gone in and he had developed 10 duplex lots, which means you can get 20 units in these 10 lots. And the way that he did it is the city zoned it to build 2 units, kind of like a townhouse structure. One side sat on a pad, the other side sat on a pad, and they were shared by a common wall. Now, those duplex lots sold for $45,000 a piece. So the two combined was $90,000. So he effectively had 10 $90,000 lots. So that's $900,000. Well, I looked at the city, and the city was getting ready to rezone that entire area. And those duplex pads, because the density was going to be increased, those duplex pads would now be single-family lots, meaning that the $90,000 duplex lot was now an $80,000 single lot. So I spent $900,000 buying 10 duplex lots. 3 weeks later, the city changed the zoning. I knew they were going to do it. And then I immediately turned around and sold 20 building lots, single building lots, for $80,000 a piece. The whole transaction took less than 90 days. Okay? Tremendous profit. I did close to no work on that transaction other than some marketing and some selling. But it was a highly, highly profitable deal that came merely because I understand how to read title and I know how to look for plat maps and zoning. So if you're not familiar with how to do that, let me encourage you to contact your Department of Zoning and Planning and start going to their meetings. Start identifying where the growth is happening. Where are they changing the zoning so that regentrification can happen? And then just go in there and start picking those properties up through option contracts and various other things. Great, great profit center. Oh, and I'll tell you this, the $900,000 that I needed for those lots, I got 100% financing from a hard money lender, put up the whole 900 grand, didn't ask for a dime of my own money. Why? Because I showed him the plats. I showed him when the city was rezoning. I said, look at this thing. This is a guaranteed profit. He said, great, here's 900 grand. All right? And guys, this is why I'm going back to, if you really take the time to do your due diligence on this stuff, you don't have to push so hard to make marginal deals deals. There are great deals out there. You just need to slow down a little bit, breathe, relax, and go in search of the good stuff, okay? Because if it's a bank-owned property or an REO, or you're buying a tape of properties and you're the 90th person that's aware of this deal, it's been shopped. And shop deals are hard to fund. Let me give it to you in this vernacular. Please write this down. The harder it is to find, okay, speaking in terms of the deal, the harder it is to find, the easier it is to fund. On the converse, the easier it is to find, the harder it is to fund. So if you just trip into this deal and it's just too good to be true and some agent brought it to you, it was just too easy, it's probably going to be pretty hard to fund. Now, certainly I would never say that you can't get lucky. I've gotten lucky. Deals have fallen into my lap. I asked the question, why am I so lucky? It turns out it's because I'm networked. That's why I'm lucky. And I closed it. But most of the time, the great deals that I tell you guys about, I spent hours, if not days or weeks or months, researching the properties, going out, talking with the homeowners, talking with the neighbors, determining what the condition of the neighborhood was, talking with the Department of Planning and Zoning, seeing what was coming through town, determining if that was a great investment or not. Guys, I know everybody tries to make getting rich sound easy, but I got to tell you, it's not that it's hard, but it is a lot of work. I mean, I probably work 12, 14 hours a day. But the difference between my 12 and 14 hours a day and maybe yours, if you're still working at a job you don't like, I actually really like what I do. I don't know if that's coming through the audio or through the camera here, but I really love my job. I love getting out of bed. I love going to work. I love helping people make money. To me, it's just a lot of fun. It's like playing the board game that never ends. It's just a lot of fun. but I also really enjoy the super sleuth detective work that's required to go out and find these great deals. And if you guys are in a hurry to make money, I got to tell you, making money is going to be really hard. Just slow down. Think it through. Go through the stages of what is required to find a great deal, and it will come. And I shared this story with some of my clients the other day. There was a woman in Texas who, about 6 months ago, I went out and I did some personal consulting with her. She paid me a lot of money to fly out and help her build her business there. And so I was out there, and we went to the foreclosure auctions, and I showed her how to do all of these things. And we went to the auction in December, and we didn't get anything. Well, she went to the auctions in January. As many of you may know, foreclosure sales in the state of Texas are held the first Tuesday of every month, and it's only one time a month. So, I mean, it is an event. People go down there with their stadium chairs and their seats and their hot dog vendors and their little umbrellas. And I was there in December, and it was cold, let me tell you. But we stood out there from 9:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon. We didn't get anything, but she learned a lot. She went back in January, didn't get anything, learned a lot more. February she went back, didn't learn anything, but she learned a lot more. Didn't get anything, but learned a lot more. March finally came. She goes up, she purchases a property, and as she's delivering the cashier's checks to the trustee that was crying the sale, trustee gets a call. Hello? Okay. Yeah. All right. Sorry, ma'am, the homeowner has filed bankruptcy, so I'm afraid you won't be able to purchase that property today. She called me, and she was incredibly discouraged. She said, Lee, man, how long does it take? What do I got to do to get a great deal here? I said, be patient. I said, just be patient. As long as you're doing the things necessary day in and day out, you will eventually get a deal. The people who never make any money at this business are the ones who come at it 90 miles an hour. They spend 3 or 4 weeks at it, and then they just give up. Okay? You got to work hard. You got to be consistent. You got to do the same things day in, day out. Mail letters, make phone calls, write offers, talk to people, network, go to lunch, go on vacation, okay? That's what you got to be doing day in and day out. So she called me. She went to the auction in April. And man, I wish I could play that message for you that she left me. She was so incredibly excited. She purchased a property at foreclosure sale, $132,000 she got it for. Fixed up, cleaned up. She told me the property's worth about $260,000, $270,000. She intends to net close to $80,000 on that deal. 80 grand. Now here's what I love about this business. Prior to this, she was a salesperson, okay? Retired in sales, decided she wanted to grow this business. And she invested a lot of money. She paid me a lot of money to come out and spend time with her. But here's what's great. I didn't just give her a fish. I taught her to fish, and she now knows how to go out and find deal after deal after deal. So that $180,000 score took 6 months, but how easy are they going to come after that? So for those of you that maybe haven't done a deal yet, or you're trying to go bigger, you want bigger deals, let me tell you, just breathe, okay? It will come. You just got to continue to go through the motions. You got to keep writing those offers. You got to keep networking and talking with people, okay? Finally, we can deal with probate as far as lien coverage and those types of things. We can deal with subdividing, which again is a great, great strategy. And if you've never purchased a piece of ground and subdivided it for higher and best use, you really should. I got stories, but I don't have time. Foreclosure guarantee search for foreclosure property, full coverage search plus address of the lien holders to the property in default. Now, it used to be they were called TSG reports, which stood for trustee sale guarantees. And basically, the foreclosing trustee would provide full title on the properties going to auction so that you could know if you had a first lien, that you were bidding on a first lien or not. But they realized that that was filled with all kinds of liability, and they stopped doing it, which was unfortunate because the information was tremendous. So now, most title companies in most markets that I've been into for consulting and buying and those types of things, most title companies that we've dealt with will provide the title right up until the day of the auction. And they're not going to print anything out for you. They're just going to do the title abstract against the property. They're going to do a quick search against the borrower to check for judgment liens, deficiency judgments, child support liens, collections, back taxes, IRS liens, and those types of things. And it doesn't really take all that long. It's really just a good relationship with your title officer. And if you give them the address, they can give you a slew of information, which will give you a tremendous insight as to whether or not that property is a good deal. Title can make or break a great deal, but creativity can make you a fortune, if you know how to read title, okay? How big is the lot? How big are the surrounding parcels? Is the house built on one end of the lot? Can we buy the house, subdivide the lot, own the lot free and clear, sell it to a builder, subordinate the dirt cost, hard money the loan, and then the builder can get construction financing, all right? Those are all kinds of great deals that you can go after once you start being creative a little bit and you understand how to read title, okay? Okay, I know that is the fastest I have ever taught title in my career. So let me make sure I didn't lose anybody in the dust here. I'm going to pause here for a moment and pay you, or I'm sorry, go through your title questions. Okay. Are we charging the seller in advance for all these documents? Title search, appraisal, and other docs. Gwen, good question. Up till this point, you don't need to charge anybody anything because as of yet, we're always going to check title before we go under contract. Okay, so you write the contract, you're in negotiations. Somewhere in that process, you need to check title. Now, if you're going to go down and buy this thing at auction, do a quick title search via the telephone. Don't worry about opening title. Most states across the country, because of insurance reform, can no longer just give you title reports, and they do have to charge you for them. However, there are some loopholes that your title provider will tell you about where they can get you title on 4 or 5 deals without charging, but if you don't close, they will indeed start charging. And that just comes back to being a good negotiator, okay? So you can do that. As for appraisal and other docs, Gwen, the only time we're going to order an appraisal is if everything checks out and the deal looks good. If that's happening, then great. Okay, Jerry. Under what circumstances do you personally not get title insurance? Jerry, that's a very advanced question, and I'm glad you asked it because it gives me some insight as to what you've been up to. And it's interesting in this fashion, Jerry. Most people don't realize that you can buy real property without getting title insurance, okay? If you know how to read title well enough, you don't have to get title insurance. You certainly run that risk. However, title insurance, depending on what kind of a policy you buy, either insures the title from the entire period from the house being constructed to the time you acquiring it through the time you own it. Basically, title insurance is saying from the time you acquire to the time you sell, everything that happened with that property going back to its inception is covered. So any lien claims, any child support stuff, anything that comes on title, the insurance company will defend your honor against those things. However, to answer your question, Jerry, if I go out and find a piece of property where the borrower bought it, let's say 2 years ago, they got title insurance when they acquired it, their credit report's clean, the abstract shows clean, I can find nothing on them about bankruptcy or anything else, they got insurance for the last 2 years. So really the risk that I'm taking is that something happened in that 2-year period of time moving forward. Now, Jerry, if I'm going to buy the property and hold it long term, I'm going to get title insurance because I want that protection. If I'm going to buy the property, fix it up, rehab it, and immediately sell it, and my ownership is going to be less than, let's say, 6 months, I'm probably not going to get title insurance on my acquisition side because I'm going to have to pay for title insurance when I sell it to the new buyer. So in that instance, I'm not going to insure the title. I'm just going to acquire it and move on and save myself the 2 or 3 points for title insurance, okay? Good question. Brian says, will I learn to identify rezoning by the city from a local title reading class? You know, Brian, I would love to tell you you would. And this sounds horrible, but as a former real estate broker, I just don't have a lot of faith in practitioners of real estate and title because they might be good at their jobs, but they're not good at advising investors because 99.9% of them have never invested. I mean, the only property they've ever purchased has been their own. They've never done anything with title or rezoning or going through the process and the paperwork that's associated with that. You know, probably the best thing you could do, Brian, is go find a large developer in your market. and ask to take them to lunch. That's really where you're going to get the best information. And that's how I learned this business, is I actually just started hanging out with developers, and I went down to the title and the county recorder's office with them, and I watched what they looked for and why they were looking in those areas. And it really was a very, very good investment of time, and I would encourage you to do that. Brian, I know you said silent, but I have to share this. Brian says, I will pay you $1 million to come out and work with me on all of my future profits based on an overly generous percentage. All right, Brian, you give me $100,000 down in cash, and we can. I'll carry a note for the remaining $900,000 secured against your personal property in the form of a first lien position at 5% interest because it's owner occupied. Isn't that nice of me? I'm such a saint. Laura says, what was the office called to go and learn about title, plat maps, etc.? It is the Department of Planning and Zoning. Okay, the Department of Planning and Zoning. They have monthly meetings. They keep minutes. You can go back and look at the meetings and the recordings and all of those things. They're actually very easy to get access to. And I love your questions because it tells me you guys probably haven't been doing that, and I believe you're missing out on a huge profit center. Okay, I was told by a title company that it will cost me $400 to do a title search. So what to say to get it cheap or free? Whatever the title company is, tell them thank you for their time, but you're going to take your business elsewhere because they're charging you an arm and a leg, and that's ridiculous. Okay, that's what I love about America. It's free enterprise. If you can get it done cheaper by someone else faster in a different place, then do it with them. Okay. Chris says, I've been getting 110% policies for the title company. It costs about $200 typically. Guys, again, going back here, let me just make this point. If you will go to the title class, go to the recorder's office, everything that title companies do to research title is public record. There is nothing that a title company has access to that you as an individual, as a citizen of this country, can get. You do not have to pay title companies to do this research for you. Okay? So learn it. Do it yourself. It's incredibly cumbersome to have title companies do it. And this is part of the reason why I can get title. I do it myself. I pull it up myself. I look at the title abstract, and then I go into the city, and I can determine what other liens they have against them. It's really not difficult, but every county is different with how they track and access that data. Do we need to flip tape, Philip? Why don't you flip it now, because I'm in a stopping point on these. Okay, guys, last chance. Any other questions about title? Please type them into the asking box now. Bill says, Lee, if you hook up with a title company, they should do search for you in return for your business, correct? He says, mine does. Bill, that actually is what has changed. Your title company, according to California state law, is supposed to be charging you for those titles, but there is a loophole in the law that allows them to offset those costs and discount those costs on your first closing. So they'll offer you several free title searches for free, but if you're not closing deals with them, they'll eventually cut you off. Something else you all need to be aware of about title insurance, there's a 95% markup on title. 95%, which means their hard costs for writing the binder and the policy is 5%. Now, I'm certainly not taking into account overhead and staffing and all of those things, but just to buy the binder, it's 5%. So if you're not negotiating on your title fees, you absolutely need to negotiate with your title provider and say, hey, sorry, not going to happen. My first grade teacher said there's no such thing as a stupid question. So here's one. Do you lend money to buy liens on properties in bulk? Again, it's a niche market, Robert. And you would need to have the deal under contract before I could even start taking it around. You would need to have it under contract before I could even start taking it around. The answer is I personally don't. And the reason why is I have bought discounted tape in pools in bulk, and it was an absolute nightmare. And the reason I believe most lenders don't get involved in that side of the business is most people who think that that's a fun business don't have the infrastructure necessary to manage that volume of business. So, Robert, if you're going to pull off a large pool buy of discounted notes, you need to make sure that you contract or partner with a servicing company, a Aquin Mortgage or an Aurora Loan Servicing or one of these other service companies. Because, man, the tape that I bought only had like 9 properties in it, and it was a logistical nightmare. Properties were located in different states. They were a long ways from where I was. We had to do due diligence on each individual property. We had to order BPOs in each different property. Then we had to contact the homeowners and renegotiate new purchase and sale agreements and new liens. It really was a nightmare. And I consider myself to be relatively astute at these dealings. So if I were to do it again, Robert, I would certainly bring on a servicing company to do the deal with me. Brian says, can I start doing a big deal? Please. Judith, what does it mean for us as buyers if the person has the lien, not the property? If the lien is against the person, not the property, you would need to get a written letter from the lien holder against the borrower. Now, if you're going to get title insurance, it doesn't matter because it will transfer off of the property and the title insurance will protect you from it coming back against you. However, if you're going to close without title insurance, you would need to get a letter from the lien holder against the seller stating that they were releasing their rights to the property. Now, I'll tell you what, if I've got a lien against a borrower that's attached to a property and you come to me and ask me for a release, I'm going to ask you for money. All right? So just be aware that you may have to pay them off to get the lien to go away. Brian, I will give you a lifetime tithing percentage to your charity of choice. Oh my goodness, are you really going to play the charity card on me, Brian? Again, I admire your creativity. Yachio says, so anything I can see in the records of the recording office is same as go through the title company. You just got to know where to look, Yachio. That's correct. Okay. All right, we've exhausted title questions, which means we can move on. Let's get to the first property here. And we are going to here. Okay. I'm looking at page 58 in the corresponding manual that you should be looking at. Page 58 says, to get paid, you always have to make sure all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. Below is a list of the documents you need to complete to make sure you get or broker the funds in a timely manner. All right? Rule number 1, next to the button where it says contract, where my finger is pointing right now, I need you to put next to that, property must be under contract, signed by all parties with proof of earnest money receipt signed. Okay? Proof of earnest money receipt signed. There are only 3 things required to make a document legal. So if you've ever asked the question, can you write a contract on a cocktail napkin? The answer is yes, as long as you have the buyer and the seller, the amount that you're purchasing for the property and the date you're going to close, and consideration. Okay? Those are the only 3 things. Consideration. So on a purchase and sale agreement, we've had people send them in to us and they're incomplete because the seller or the seller's agent has not signed the earnest money receipt deposit or the earnest money receipt, which, as you guys need to know, earnest money does not need to be actual cash. Earnest money can just be a check, okay? A copy of a check, as long as your contract says earnest money to be deposited within 3 days of settlement, you don't have to transfer real funds. You can just provide a copy of the check. And we must have receipt by the seller, signed receipt, that they've received the copy of the earnest money. If you don't have that, you don't have contract, okay? If you don't have contract, we won't even look at the file. Why? Because if we spend time on due diligence with a property that's not under contract, essentially what that means is anytime, any person, anywhere, any day can come and just snatch the deal out from under you. So we don't want to be spending a bunch of time and energy doing due diligence on a property that you may no longer have the right to buy, okay? Web form or PDF application filled out and faxed or emailed in. Okay, that's the web form that we looked at back here. This is for some of you where you're going to fill out the online web form here. We found this in session 2 on page 47. Page 47 here. All right. So the web form is the beginning. So you start with the web form, you attach in a PDF format the purchase and sale agreement, and now we're going to need a 1003 financial statement from the borrower. What is a 1003? It is the uniform lending application that most lenders use when they're opening a file for funding. Now, can we get around the 1003? Yeah, but the 1003 really is exhaustive as to the amount of information it gives us about the borrower. Now, what I find fascinating is I get a lot of hesitation from some of you that are sending in deals saying, well, I don't want to fill out a 1003. Well, why not? Well, it's too much work and you don't need all that information. Really? Guys, you don't talk to lenders like that, okay? If a lender asks you for a piece of information, you give it to them. If they want you to get more documentation, more due diligence items, you get it to them. Now, if you really want to ensure success, and I'll tell you, a few years ago I went out, very large multi-million-dollar deal. I was presenting a $20 million package. It was packaged and bundled so well, but I had also spent close to $12,000 investing time, money, and energy creating this incredible due diligence package, and I got funding from the first investor I took it to. Why? Because I didn't hesitate to provide what I knew they would need. Because guys, again, you need to come at this business from a standpoint of this. If it was your money, what would you want to see about the property and about the borrower? And provide that information. So 1003, yeah, it's long, yeah, it's cumbersome. Let me give you a secret. Fill it out online in a writable PDF, save it, and then all you'll ever have to do is just update your asset and liabilities column as you buy more properties and incur more debt. It's relatively easy. Take the time to do it now so you can simplify the process in the future. Okay? Comps and appraisals. Now, we can start with the comps. We may require a full-blown appraisal depending on the deal, where it is, what it is. If there's something in the package that looks a little fishy, we may require an appraisal. Also, if the lender that we're outsourcing the loan to looks at it and requires an appraisal, then we will, of course, call you and say, hey, we need an appraisal. Title. If we are funding the transaction or one of our investment partners is funding the transaction, you as the borrower or you as the broker bringing the borrower to the table would be responsible to provide title insurance to us as the lender through a lender's policy. Okay? Closing documents, those will be drafted. If it's coming from one of our lending partners, they'll be drafted there. If it's coming from our office, they'll be drafted through our counsel. But we'll provide the closing documents as well as the escrow instructions, as well as the promissory note and the deed of trust. Okay? The title company, however, will produce the HUDs. These are the settlement statements. These show who's getting paid what, who's getting paid when, who's getting paid where. If the investor is bringing cash to the table, the lender will want to see where the money is coming from. They want to see that it's been sourced and seasoned, okay? Which means it doesn't matter if it's your money or not, but there needs to be full disclosure if your Uncle Bob's bringing in the cash or your Aunt Linda's bringing in the cash. We need to know where the funds are coming from so that the funds just weren't recently lifted from the local 7-Eleven, okay? We need to know the source and the seasoning of those funds so that we can ensure that it's clean. The last thing we need is to fund a deal where the cash that was put down is fraudulent cash, drug money, who knows. So we want to see that the money is coming out of an account where those funds have been sitting for a period of time. That gives us and our investors a comfort level to know that those are legitimate proceeds. Okay? All right. Here's what some of the documents look like. I'm looking at page number 60. Now, I would encourage all of you to read it. I'm not going to take the time to read it here, but this is the general, unconditional, and continuing guarantee from the borrower to the lender in the amount of the loan. All right. Now, this is just kind of a boilerplate. I provided it in here just as a guide, but please know, I do not want you guys drafting your own promissory notes. I do not want you drafting your own trust deeds. I do not want you writing your own escrow instructions. I do not want you drafting your own HUDs. I mean, I have heard some crazy stories from some of you guys that are going online and finding all these services where you can just input some data and it'll spin out all of these legal documents, and I'm thinking, yikes, you're crazy, okay? Take these to competent legal counsel that you trust. And if you don't have competent legal counsel that you've dealt with, please go in search of some. Call your title company. Say, hey, do you have a good attorney? Most title companies have attorneys on staff or are owned by attorneys. A lot of attorneys just open title companies because it's really real estate law. That's what a title company is. It's real estate law. So many of them are owned by attorneys for that very reason. Okay. This is the guarantee, the binding effect. Then we get into the trust deed on the right. Now again, these are just for your perusal to review. Do not use them to file legal documents on any deal you're going to be doing. Clearly, this is a trust deed. If you're in a mortgage state, you would not be using this document. You would be using a mortgage paperwork. Okay? So the trust deed goes on to lay out the terms of how the lender can regain possession of the real property through the deed. And then the promissory note lays out the terms of the loan. Okay? Now, this is where people get confused. People believe that a trust deed dictates the loan amount, the interest rate, the terms, the payouts, the balloons, the calls, the bullets, all those things, and it doesn't. The trust deed is nothing more than the securing document that says you hold title, but it does not tell you what the terms of the agreement are. And this is what trust deed states did as we settled west from the east. The East Coast adopted the British formula for property acquisition, which is the mortgage. It not only gives you title, but it also lays out the terms of the agreement. Well, because there are terms in the agreement, it's now subject to legal interpretation, which is why mortgage states take so much longer to foreclose. In a non-judicial deed of trust state, you get title through the deed of trust, which has nothing to do with the terms of the loan, but it is backed or supported or addendumed by the promissory note. So the promissory note lays out the terms of the loan. Now, if you're in a non-judicial foreclosure state and you're getting foreclosed on, you can certainly challenge through a suit against the beneficiary that there's something in the promissory note that is fraudulent. And you guys have probably all seen these companies popping up all over the place, and they do what are called forensic loan audits. You know, there's like a 1 in 100% chance that a forensic loan audit, if you take it to the nth degree and sue, that you're actually going to end up with a free and clear title to a property. In fact, most courts in today's market are just saying, give me a break. Okay? You signed the loan, you should have read the documents, you didn't. So even if this forensic loan auditing company finds discrepancies in the language, what are you going to do? Seriously, you're going to spend all that money on legal fees? I won't get on my soapbox about that. But just know, don't waste your money on forensic loan audits, in my opinion. Just read it. I mean, if you know what's in here, you're going to be much better protected than you are paying some yahoo who flunked out of law school to read your loan docs. No offense to you if you own a forensic loan auditing company. Probably should have said that first. Anyway. Quitclaim deed. There are 3 ways you can transfer title to a property. You can do it through a quitclaim deed, a special warranty deed, or through the warranty deed. Okay? Here's the difference. Please make sure you write them down. And on this note, let me give you this little tidbit of information. Okay? See the warranty deed here on page 74? I want you to put the following. Always get, never give. Okay? Always get, never give. Here's why. Now let me move that down. Always get a warranty deed, never give a warranty deed. Okay, now this is going back to Jerry's question about whether or not you always have to get title. Well, if you're getting a quitclaim deed, you probably should get title insurance, okay? Here's how it works. In a quitclaim deed, when somebody issues you a quitclaim deed, granting you rights and title to the property. They're basically telling you, here's the property, good luck. They're not insuring anything that has happened on the title from the date of inception through the term of their ownership, okay? That's a quitclaim deed. We refer to quitclaim deeds as merely cleansing title. We use quitclaim deeds to get people to sign off, notices of interest or those types of things that have been recorded against title. We use them to scrub title. That's all quitclaim deeds are typically used for. If you're buying a property from a seller that refuses to give you anything but a quitclaim deed, that's a big red flag that they're aware that there are other liens either on title or about to be on title, and they don't want to warranty those, okay? Now, a special warranty deed is okay, but not nearly as pretty as a warranty deed. A special warranty deed says, hey, from the time that I've owned this property that I'm now delivering title to you, I'm ensuring that title has been clean and will remain clean from the time that I acquired the property to the time that I'm now selling the property to you. So, Jerry, that's why I was saying, if they bought the property 2 years ago and they give me a special warranty deed, essentially what they're saying is title from the day we bought it is clean. And if anything comes against me now as the new owner, I can sue the old owner, which means I don't need title insurance. However, if I had title insurance and something did pop up on title, the title insurance company would pay the attorney to battle on my behalf. However, and again, guys, if you're new to the business, let me simplify all of this. Pay for title insurance. It's cheaper than making a mistake. However, as you grow in this business and you become more familiar with how it works, you can save yourself a substantial amount of money by knowing what you can and can't do. And finally, the warranty deed. This is why I said on the warranty deed, always get, never give. Here's why. When you give someone a warranty deed, you're not only guaranteeing title from the time that you acquired the property to the time that you're now selling it to them, you're literally guaranteeing title from the time that structure was created, built. Which means if there's a mechanics lien from like 6 years ago, if you don't get a warranty deed and that mechanics lien pops up, you're liable, okay? The warranty deed allows you to go back to the construction of that home from the original owner, okay? So whoever sells it to you is guaranteeing title from the beginning. This is why we always get, we never give, okay? If I'm going to sell a piece of property to somebody and they refuse to get me a title insurance policy, I'll still sell to them, but I'm going to sell to them using a quitclaim deed, okay? I'll sell to them using the quitclaim deed. I'm not going to give them any other form of title because if they're not going to get title insurance, I'm certainly not going to insure it. I'm not going to take on that liability, okay?